The broadcast is now
today.
starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everyone to our Cecilia Health webinar today. The title is Stop Focusing on What You Can't Eat and Learn All About What You Can Eat, Healthy Eating with Diabetes. See below at the bottom of the screen if you have any technical difficulties. There is a Citrix support number to call, 1-800 263-6317 if you have any issues technically during today's presentation. So, oh shoot. Let's see.
Just a little trouble advancing.
It won't advance, Wendy. Okay. Let's see what we can do about that. Hang on. Just a sec. Did it work now? Or did I do it? Did you do it or did I?
Did it.
Okay, okay. Well, good. Let's see. Our presenter today is Wendy Greger. She is a registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator with a wealth of experience in diabetes and weight management. Wendy has been working with Cecilia Health for 2 years. She also works with her local hospital providing nutrition counseling, diabetes classes, and diabetes prevention classes. Wendy works individually with patients who are having trouble reaching their health goals. She believes that through compassion, knowledge, behavior modification, and motivation, that patients are able to step by step walk toward better health and a better quality of life with diabetes. So now let's listen to Wendy's approach to eating, and that is to stop focusing on all the food you aren't supposed to eat with diabetes and instead take a positive approach by giving your attention to what you can eat. Thank you, Wendy, for being here. So take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm so glad you're joining me today for our discussion on what we eat, what we can eat. And this is going to be an interactive program, and I hope that all of you feel welcome to ask questions. You can use the questions section of the webinar toolbar at any time and write down your question, and we will be monitoring that and try to answer your questions as we go through our talk. But you're also welcome to ask questions at the end of our seminar. So we also want to mention that our presentation, it's intended to provide general nutrition advice, and it does represent professional opinion from myself as one of the Cecilia Health certified diabetes educators. And so it's always a good idea to talk with your physician when you're planning to make changes to your nutrition plan, when you're trying to change your diet. It's always smart to talk to your physician, because our information does not substitute for the medical advice that your physician provides. All right, as we get started, I'd like to make the point that food choices really matter. And there was this, have you ever heard of this expression, let food be your medicine? And the other half of that is, and let medicine be your food. And this is from Hippocrates, who was a Greek physician some 400 years BC. And I think that this nutrition advice or this medical advice might be one of the greatest medical prescriptions that was ever offered, because food is so important to our health. And when we make choices about our food, every bite you take is going to take you down a path either towards health or towards disease. And it's really that clear. And so I just inspire you to make food your medicine and make healthy choices that are going to lead you towards health and away from disease. So our talk today, we're going to include some fun stuff. We're going to have a little bit of a little quiz, diabetes nutrition myths and facts. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to move into what to eat when you have diabetes. And then the last part of our talk is on actually building better meals. So concrete advice on what you can eat at each of your meals to make those important choices, make your best bites. Okay, so here is our truth or myth section, and we've got 5 statements here, and I hope that you'll take a pen and just write down whether you think that this is actually a true statement or a myth. So first, eating too much sugar causes diabetes. Is that truth or myth? Write your guess down. People with diabetes should only eat special diabetic foods. Is that truth or a myth? Carrots are high in sugar. Have you heard that? I've heard that a lot. Is it true or is it a myth? And then how about high protein, low carbohydrate diets are really the best for blood sugar and weight control? Do you think that that's true? And people with diabetes can eat the same foods as everyone else. I wonder if that's true or myth. Have you made your final choices? All right, let's do the big reveal. Almost all of these are myths until you get to the very last one, and that is a truth. So eating sugar causes diabetes. You know, when you say it like that, most people might be able to figure out that that's a myth. But you'd be surprised how many patients I talk to in counseling that are sitting there and they say, I just got diagnosed with diabetes, but I don't get it because I don't even like sweets. I don't eat a lot of sugar. How did I get diabetes? And so that's why I think it's a myth, a common myth, because I hear this often. And the fact of the matter is, eating sugar doesn't cause diabetes. The cause of type 2 diabetes, the root cause is insulin resistance. And what does that mean? So insulin is that hormone that helps your body move sugar from your blood into your muscle cells. So insulin is what clears your blood of the sugar. And when you have type 2 diabetes, you have insulin resistance. So that insulin isn't working the way it's supposed to. And what causes insulin resistance? Well, it's part genetic. You have inherited the genetic predisposition to have diabetes, and it's part environmental. It's part what you eat in terms of if you're overweight and you're underactive. Those two things can lead to insulin resistance. And a person might be overweight by eating a lot, too many calories from fatty foods, and they may never eat sweets. So root is that sugar does not cause diabetes, but once you have diabetes, we do need to watch how much sugar we eat. How about number 2? People with diabetes should only eat special diabetic foods. Well, this is a myth. And there are diabetic foods in the grocery store. You may have come across diabetic candy or diabetic chocolate or diabetic cookies. And generally, these foods just end up costing twice as much as regular food. And they may not necessarily be healthier. Sometimes they have a lot of sugar alcohols that people have a hard time digesting and gives you upset stomach. And certainly people with diabetes can just eat regular food, regular healthy food, but you don't have to buy special things specific for people with diabetes. Carrots are high in sugar. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say that to me. Like, I'll eat vegetables. I can eat tomatoes, or I can eat broccoli, or I can eat spinach, but I don't eat carrots because they're so high in sugar. Now, I don't know about you, but I love carrots. They have a wonderful crunch. They do taste a little bit sweeter than some of the other vegetables, particularly young carrots. But they're not really high in sugar. Let's put it more accurately. They're higher in sugar than some of the other vegetables. So they might have maybe 7 grams of carbohydrate in a half of a cup, and maybe broccoli has 5 grams. It's a little bit higher, but it's not really high, because 7 grams of carbohydrate is still pretty low. So my message is, go ahead and eat your carrots. They're good for you, they're a food that's hard to overeat. So you naturally limit the number of carrots you eat. So they're always a good choice. High protein, low carb diets are the best for blood sugar and weight control. Boy, isn't this a popular, popular conception that people have nowadays, that they should be eating low carb diets and that they should eat all kinds of protein. Well, in fact, there are a lot of ways that you can eat healthy with diabetes. You can follow a lower carb program. In fact, the American Diabetes Association has acknowledged that there are a wide variety of healthy diets for people with diabetes, and you can follow a lower carb diet. But I'm not going to say this is a low carb diet. It's a moderate carbohydrate diet. And the reason why that is useful is that all of the healthy carbohydrates that people tend to cut out carry a lot of antioxidants and vitamins and minerals and plant-based compounds that really are offering health protection, that help protect you from the degenerative diseases like heart disease, cancer, diabetes. So the nutrients that are in plant-based carbohydrates are good for us, and I'm going to point some of those out as we go. Last but not least, people with diabetes can eat the same foods as anyone else, and this is true. In fact, I would say that the type of a healthy meal plan that we're going to talk about today would really be good for everybody. So everyone in your family would benefit from eating the type of a diet that someone with diabetes is encouraged to eat. So let's say that everyone should just eat a healthy diet, and that includes people with diabetes. Okay. Now I'm going to move into Nutrition 101, and I want to share with you what are the nutrients in foods that make a difference and how do they work in your body. There are 3 nutrients that provide calories, and there are 3 nutrients that provide no calories. And I'm going to focus on the first 3 nutrients that provide calories. So these are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. These are the foods that you're going to find on your nutrition label are telling you how many calories or how many grams are in your food, how many grams of carb, proteins, and fats, because these grams are translated into calories. So carbohydrates are, let me give you some examples, things like bread and rice and pasta, cereal, of course, fruits and vegetables, and then things people don't realize that beans and milk, they have some carbohydrates in them. And then all of you are aware that sweets have carbohydrates. Sweets are sources of sugar, and sugar is a type of carbohydrate. So carbohydrates are a fuel for our body. This is what provides the sugar, the glucose, into our bloodstream, and then our muscle cells will use that sugar for energy. And so carbohydrates are fuel, and they do raise blood sugar, and I've given you a lot of examples. What are examples of unhealthy carbohydrates? Cookies, cakes, pies, soda, sugar-sweetened beverages. Those carbohydrates you can do without, but these are definitely fuel. The next nutrient I want to highlight are proteins. And I'd like you to think about proteins as the building blocks for our body. So your muscles are made out of protein. Your heart is made out of protein. Your brain is made out of protein. So, and your skin, every cell in your body is made out of protein. So think of protein as building blocks. Protein is not a great source of fuel. Carbohydrates and fats are the fuel for our body. Protein is the building blocks. All right, so fats are the third nutrient that provides calories, and they are also a carrier of a lot of vitamins and minerals. But the thing about fats is that they're very dense in calories. So you get a lot more calories in fats like oil and butter and salad dressing than you do in things like fruits and vegetables and beans. So they're a dense source of calories. So there you go. Those are the three sources of nutrients that provide calories. And I think our next slide gives you examples of some of the best choices within that group. So of our carbohydrate choices, we're encouraging you to include vegetables of all colors, you know, everything in the rainbow. Vegetables are your best source of carbohydrates. They provide a lot of nutritional value with very low calories. They're filling, they're satisfying. And later in the program, we're going to talk about how we suggest that half of your meal consist of vegetables. Again, because they're so satisfying and nutrient rich. Whole fruits. Fruit is nature's sweet. And in cultures around the world where they don't have all the processed sweets and sugars that we have, fruit provides their dessert. And so think about using fruit as a way to substitute for processed sugars that so many of us eat every day. So think about it as a dessert. You might have a little bowl of berries, strawberries or blueberries or raspberries in the summer. In the winter, like right now, you might be able to take an apple and slice that up and put just a tiny little bit of maybe juice on there and a sprinkle of cinnamon. And that can be baked in the oven, and you have a baked apple compost for dessert. Wonderful source of sweetness and yet filled with nutrition goodness, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fiber, all the things that we want. Other best sources of carbohydrates are beans. And beans are a nice substitute for meat in your diet. If you wanted to have a meatless Monday or go without meat one day, or maybe choose one meal of the day, you're going to go without meat and traditional protein, you can use beans. And many cultures around our world use beans and grains combined together as a wonderful protein replacement. And yet beans are the highest naturally occurring source of fiber in our food supply. Think about that. So a half of a cup of beans provides about 7-8 grams of fiber. A half of a cup of fruit provides 2 grams of fiber. A half of a cup of vegetables, about 2 grams of fiber. Beans and a half of a cup of brown rice provides about 2 grams of fiber. So beans are just a wonderful source of fiber. Are you including any beans in your diet? And where could you incorporate that in a way that you'd enjoy and it would add some nice nutritional value? Okay, next best choices for protein would include those protein foods that are lower in fat and prepared in ways that don't add a lot of fat. So baked fish, broiled let's say broiled chicken, grilled steak, stir fry. So lean cuts of fish and poultry and beef and pork are great sources of protein. Now, I've had a lot of people say, well, I don't think I'm supposed to eat beef. I'm not supposed to eat red meat. And you could choose to cut those out if you'd like. But if you like beef and you want to include some beef in your diet and some pork in your diet, there are lean cuts. For example, sirloin and tenderloin are wonderfully lean choices. And in fact, a 3-ounce portion of sirloin steak has less fat than a chicken thigh. Think about that. So depends on the cut that you're choosing. And pork, you can choose pork chops, which are lean, and pork tenderloin, which is also very lean, and just trim off the visible fat. And those are great choices. And of course, there's eggs. There's another choice for protein. And then our next best choices come in the area of fats. Now, we know that there are good fats and less good fats. How do I avoid bad fats? But by saying there are better choices. And that includes plant-based fats, right? Plants are good for us. So nuts and nut butters, peanut butter, snacking on a small handful of peanuts or of walnuts, cashews. Nuts are healthy. Seeds, sunflower seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds. These are all good, healthy choices for fats. And avocados and oils. Oils are very concentrated in calories, and canola oil and olive oil are two of the best choices. Okay, now we're going to look at the next three nutrients that promote health and they don't provide any calories: vitamins, minerals, and water. And when you think of processed foods, what do they process out? What are you losing when you eat processed foods? Well, often you're losing these three nutrients. Think about potato chips. You take a potato that has a fair amount of water in it, and you slice it up very thinly, and you drop it in deep fat, a vat of very hot fat, and you are going to end up, destroying all of the B vitamins, the delicate vitamins that are in potatoes are often lost or leached out when you make them into potato chips. And then you add a bunch of salt, which is a mineral you don't need more of. So when you think about fruit and you refine it down into its basic sugar component, like cane sugar, you've lost all the vitamins, you've lost all of the fiber, you've lost all of the minerals, and you've lost the moisture, the water. So when we want to eat foods that are going to give us all the vitamins and minerals and water, think about an orange. That's going to have a lot of vitamin C. It's going to have a lot of potassium in there. We think about a tomato. It's going to have a lot of vitamin A. And milk is going to give you a lot of calcium and magnesium, vitamin A and D. So these are the foods that are going to give us the goodness that we need. And that comes from fresh, whole foods and not from processed food products. Okay, now I'm going to turn our attention to reading food labels. Let's take a look at your typical food label and how are you supposed to read this and how do you get the most out of the nutrition facts panel. My suggestion is the first thing I want you to look at is the serving size, because the nutrition information provided on that label is relevant to that serving. So you want to make sure you know what they're talking about. So before you just go look at calories, look at how many servings are in that container and what is a serving. So in this particular label, 1 cup is a serving. And then the next thing I want you to look down towards is total carbohydrate, because this is going to impact your blood sugar. So the carbohydrates in this food are 25 grams. Now, when I talk to clients, patients, and we discuss reading labels, they often say, I read the sugar. That's what I look for. How much sugar is in this food? Well, I want you to know that the sugar, which is 2 grams in this label, is included in the total. So when it says total carbohydrate is 25 grams, rest assured that that includes the sugar. But it also includes the starch. And starch is a type of carbohydrate that breaks down into sugar, and it will have an impact on your blood sugar. So always look for total carbohydrate. Now, in this particular food, look closely at what are the other carbohydrates that you see. What are those? You see dietary fiber, and this says 9 grams. That is a really high fiber food. There's a lot of fiber in this particular food. And the beauty of fiber is that it does not break down and get absorbed into the bloodstream as sugar. Largely, dietary fiber stays unchanged and just goes through your gastrointestinal tract without being absorbed. And so really, of those 25 grams, we could practically subtract 9 of them and brings that down to 16 grams of digestible fiber, of carbohydrate. And also there's 4 sugar alcohols. You know what? Between you and me, I don't even know what this food is. But boy, oh boy, it has a lot of unusual carbohydrates in it. Sugar alcohol. This is It's not alcohol at all. It gives you, you might have the impression that this has alcohol in it. It does not. A sugar alcohol is a glucose unit that has an extra OH group attached. So in terms of chemistry, it's just a little bit modified from a regular glucose molecule. So an extra step, it has to go through an extra step to get converted into sugar for your bloodstream. So it doesn't have as big of an impact on blood sugar. We can go into that more if you guys have questions about sugar alcohols later. Okay, so while you're reading all these labels, how many carbs should you get? And I've given you some suggestions with your pen and paper. Write down these recommendations that for a moderate, balanced meal, women should shoot for about 30 to 45 grams of carbohydrate, and men should shoot for about 45 to 60 grams per meal. And if you just make a note of that on a piece of paper or something that near you that you can write on, so you'll save that as we move into meal planning, it'll be helpful. So if we said 45 is an average, 45 grams of carb for men and women in a meal is a great goal, and then 15 grams for snacks. All right, now let's talk about building meals. This is where, you know, we take all this highfalutin nutrition talk and where the rubber meets the road. Now let's talk about, what do I actually eat? What should I eat? What is a better breakfast? So a lot of times at breakfast, we're eating a lot of carbs. Think about breakfast food. We've got cereal, which is a carbohydrate. Milk has lactose in it, which is a form of sugar. Milk sugar is lactose. Bananas have a fair amount of carbohydrate in them. As you know, fruit is a source of sugar. And then sometimes people drink a glass of juice. So this typical breakfast meal could have 90 grams of carbohydrate, which is probably too much carbohydrate for almost everybody with diabetes. It's a high carb meal. That's going to lend you to having a fairly high after breakfast blood sugar. So instead, let's try this. Let's shoot for a small serving of high fiber cereal, which could be something like all bran, it could be bran flakes, it could be shredded wheat, it could be Wheaties, Product 19. These are cereals that are that don't have as many added sugars to them. You could also use like oatmeal. It's a wonderful breakfast cereal. So small bowl of whole grain, high fiber cereal, a little bit of skim milk or low fat milk or Greek yogurt. You could use that. A handful of blueberries. And if you were still hungry, a boiled egg, just to give you a little bit more calories if you needed it. And this has about 45 grams of carbohydrate, less than half of the other meal, and certainly all probably as filling as the first meal. How do you like that? Does that look good? How about a few other breakfast ideas? We could have a cup of old-fashioned oats. We could have a tablespoon of chopped walnuts, a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, and a half of a banana. That, you know what? In my opinion, that's like a perfect breakfast. You have a whole grain in your oats, and you have all of these healthy fats from the walnuts and the flaxseed. And ground flaxseed, I don't know if you've ever seen it before. You have to look for it at the grocery store. You could jot that down as a suggestion. Look for ground flaxseed, and a tablespoon of that added to your cereal. And I also like a tablespoon of ground flaxseed in my yogurt. It's delicious. And flaxseed has these plant-based omega-3 fatty acids, the same sort of fatty acid that you get in fish, but it's in a plant food. So it's a wonderful addition to this meal. So check out ground flaxseed. And just as a tip, go ahead and keep your ground flaxseed in the refrigerator or in the freezer, because it does help protect those highly degradable polyunsaturated fatty acids that once you grind the seed, then they're a little bit more susceptible to oxidative damage. So that's why I keep my ground flaxseed in the refrigerator or in the freezer. Okay, another good idea. How about a scrambled egg with some sauteed mushrooms, sliced tomatoes, and 2 slices of whole wheat bread? This only has 35 grams of carbohydrate. Question, where are the carbohydrates coming from in that meal? Answer, almost all, it's all from the bread. There's a little bit in the vegetables, but mostly it's from the bread. And isn't this a better choice than having like a skillet meal where there's sausage or bacon and fried potatoes or hash browns? You get the beauty of the scrambled egg, and you get the yumminess of the mushrooms and onions and the freshness of the tomatoes. And I just want to suggest that this is a wonderful alternative, far fewer calories than your regular fried breakfast. And you can ask for that in a restaurant. You can ask for, sauteed mushrooms and onions. You could ask for a vegetable omelet, hold the cheese, add sliced tomatoes on the side, and it's a great healthy meal. Okay, let's turn our attention to lunch. What's for lunch? What's a lighter fast food lunch? Isn't it amazing? Not amazing. Isn't it sad to think about how many people eat fast food meals that consist of burgers, fries, and soda? Look at the carbohydrate content of that meal. The cheeseburger has about 45 grams of carb. The large order of fries has about 65 grams of carb, and the large soda has 80-some grams of carb, for almost 200 grams of carbohydrate in that fast food meal, let alone the sodium and the fat. So if you're going to eat in a fast food restaurant, just get the regular little burger. Just get a small hamburger. And then get a small fry. And you could even share the fry with somebody you're with. Just to have a few French fries, but not have a large order of fries. Get a small fry and share it. And then nowadays, you can actually get sliced apples. At restaurants, you could order a side salad. You could have unsweetened tea or just a glass of water instead of that large soda. So that's a better choice. And another choice that I enjoy are some of the salads at fast food restaurants, like the Southwest salad with grilled chicken and the Southwest salad dressing. And this has about 40 grams of carb. I'm not sure. I almost think that seems a little bit high. But we go from 195 grams to 65 grams of carb down to less than 40 grams of carb for the salad choice. Wonderful idea. All right, here's some more lunch ideas. So maybe you're going to stay home for lunch. How about if you make yourself a great big green salad with a cup of chopped vegetables on top? And here, look at this. You could put a half of a cup of beans, like black beans or kidney beans or garbanzo beans. I like to open different cans of beans that are purchased where it says no salt added or low sodium beans. Rinse them off underneath in a colander, and then dump all those beans into a little plastic container and keep them in the refrigerator, and just throw a few tablespoons up to a half of a cup of beans on your salad for a great substitute for adding meat or chicken. And it's going to give you a ton of fiber. Here you could also add some almonds. You could add some fresh fruit and a vinegar and oil dressing. And here again, nice low carb meal with a ton of fiber and a great assortment of antioxidants and vitamins and minerals that are really going to lead you towards great health. So you might also try some homemade tacos with corn tortillas. Corn tortillas generally are lower in carbs. Like one corn tortilla can have less carbs. 2 corn tortillas would be about 20 to 30 grams of carb, whereas some of those mammoth-sized tortillas, the wheat tortillas, can have 40 grams of carbs. So look at the label for your tortillas when you're making your choice, and choose one that's going to keep you to your less than 40 gram target. In your tacos, you can use leftover chicken from last night's dinner that you just chop up. You can throw on some refried beans or some fresh black beans. Not fresh, but canned, rinsed, as we've talked about. You can put in some avocado and some pico de gallo. Another great lunch idea that's going to be super healthy for you and moderate in carbohydrate and lower in fat than the restaurant meal. All right, now we're going to go on to a delicious dinner. So let's look at some substitutions, some better choices. I've got a crazy high carb dinner here, which is a cup of mashed potatoes, a half of a cup of corn, a small roll, and 12 ounces of sweet tea. And the chicken fried steak might have a little bit of carbohydrate if it is breaded. I think that's what they do with chicken fried steak, but it's mostly high fat, high calorie. And most of the carbs in this meal are coming from the potatoes, the corn, the roll, and of course the sweet tea, giving us over 100 grams of carbohydrate in that dinner. And let's say we make a swap. Let's use something lower fat. We're going to grill a piece of lean steak, like a sirloin steak. We're going to bake a sweet potato, and a cup of baked sweet potatoes has the same value as a cup of regular white potato, but the sweet potato does have the extra carotenoids that come in that orange color. So there's extra vitamin A in the sweet potato, and they're also a little higher in fiber. So sweet potato is a nice change of pace from your regular white potatoes. And there is nothing wrong with a half of a cup of corn, but there's 3 times as much carbohydrate in a half of a cup of corn as there is in a half of a cup of broccoli. So the non-starchy vegetable with broccoli or green beans or cauliflower are going to, or carrots are going to give you a little less carbs. And then, so we're going to have a green salad along with that and unsweetened iced tea. And look at the carbs. This is about 40 grams of carb compared to 115. Some healthy swaps are going to really reduce your carbs and lower your fat and calories. Another delightful dinner for you to think about would be grilled salmon or any sort of grilled fish, roasted winter vegetables. And what's a winter vegetable? Well, these are probably going to be your root vegetables. So that would be potatoes, beets. You could also think of, what's that word? Parsnips. So you can cut up potatoes and beets and parsnips. You can cut up carrots and take all those root vegetables, cut them into about equal size, which about an inch size chunk, and just drizzle a little bit of oil on that, like olive oil, and maybe some herbs and spices. You might try some paprika, some garlic powder, onion powder, mix them all up with a little cracked pepper, put those on a cookie sheet, throw them in the oven and roast them at like 400 degrees for about 30-40 minutes, and it's going to be delicious. So that's roasted winter vegetables. Have that along with some steamed spinach or other sort of a green vegetable, some sparkling water. That is a meal that is worthy of guess. Delicious. And no more than 40 grams of carbohydrate and a ton of antioxidants and vitamins and minerals. Those 3 nutrients that don't have calories but are so important for us. We're getting a lot of those vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants here in these delightful dinners. Also, stir fry. You can make a stir fry pretty easily with any vegetables that you have in the refrigerator. Cabbage, celery, onions, mushrooms, peppers. I like to throw in jicama, which is a Mexican vegetable that's delicious and crunchy, and a cup of hot tea. So you've got a wonderful lower carb. Oh, and the carbohydrates in this meal are primarily coming from your 2/3 of a cup of brown rice. All right, I better keep moving on because time is running out. Plate method for meal planning. This is a handy tool as you're planning balanced meals. And keep in mind that a meal has to have at least 3 food groups to actually be a meal. And so half of your plate would be your non-starchy vegetables, and 1/4 of your plate would be lean meats, and 1/4 of your plate would be that carbohydrate source. Here it's a roll, but it could be the root vegetables, it could be potatoes, it could be a grain like rice or quinoa, or farro, all kinds of great novel grains out there now. And then a little bit of milk on the side, a little bit of fruit on the side, fruit for your dessert. But this is a beautiful, balanced meal and a lot lower in carbs than the traditional way of eating. All right, bottom line is that there's no foods that are off limits when you have diabetes. There is no diabetic diet to follow. We're just talking about eating healthy foods, whole foods, more plant-based choices, half of your meal with more vegetables, just practicing portion control. And that is the best road to follow. And carbohydrates are not bad for you. I've shown you a lot of carbohydrate choices, but we just want to make sure that your carbohydrates are not refined and processed, that your carbohydrates are whole foods. And then using that plate method to balance how many carbohydrates you get in your meal is going to go a long way to helping assure that your meals are going to be closer to 45 grams of carb than like closer to 200 grams of carb that we see in some of those fast food meals and huge restaurant meals. All right, well, I thank you guys for hanging in there with me and listening to our webinar. And now is the opportunity, if you have any questions that you'd like me to go over, feel free to type them in the question section of your toolbar. And you can, of course, say private if you don't want me to talk about it out loud, and we'll make sure someone gets back to you. You can talk to your coach about any of these things. Okay, we've got one question, and this is coming from one of our participants who's wondering about what I think about Splenda. So what do I think about Splenda? Splenda is an example of a non-nutritive sweetener, and the American Diabetes Association says that that can be part of a healthy diet for everybody, for people with diabetes. It will not raise your blood sugar, and it gives you a little bit of sweet. When you want to add a little sweet to your coffee or your tea or to your oatmeal or to your iced tea, and you don't want to add a lot of carbohydrates, you can choose Splenda, and it's perfectly appropriate to be included in your meal plan. And if you wanted a more detailed answer about Splenda, definitely talk to your coach about that to get his or her opinion. One other question that came in, and this is that it looks like a lot more carbohydrates than I've been eating because I've cut out all breads and potatoes. So I like to make the message that carbohydrates, when you choose them, we want them to be whole foods. A lot of breads are refined. Bread products are often refined, and it's a perfectly good choice to remove refined bread products and make sure that the carbs that you do choose are things like fruits and vegetables and beans and a little bit of carbohydrate in your milk. And if you really are not sure if it's okay for you to eat 45 grams of carb in a meal, please have that conversation with your coach so that he or she can provide more details about that. 45 grams is actually a pretty low carb meal compared to the way people normally eat. So if you're restricting your carbs to 45 in a meal, it's lower carb than the average American meal. All right. I don't see any other questions, but be sure to ask your coach for any other, about any questions that you might have had that I didn't get to. And I also want to let you know about upcoming live events, including in April, say no to diabetes complications and say yes to reducing your risk of keeping your kidneys and your nerves and your eyes all healthy and your heart healthy. So we want to help you avoid complications. So that's our April live event. In May, safe and smart exercise for people with diabetes. In June, Mythbusters, separating fact from fiction. And in July, diabetes in your diet, taking it to the next level. All of those are going to be awesome opportunities for you to jump on our live event and get some great advice. And also, if you need more support, make sure that you can talk to your coach about attending the next event, about if you'd like to get some text appointment reminders, and go to our Facebook page for more great diabetes information and tips at Cecilia Health Personalized Diabetes Coaching. And thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you've been given lots of ideas on letting food be your medicine, and I hope you make it a great day. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye-bye.